If there were a historical version of the Golden Child Award, Alexander the Great would undoubtedly take the crown. Born a prince, tutored by a genius, Aristotle, son of a warrior king, Philip II, and destined for greatness, while you're still struggling to write your CV, he had already conquered half the known world. Imagine being 20 years old, what would you be doing? Studying in college? Looking for a job? Meanwhile, Alexander? He became the king of Macedonia and started building a vast empire. By the time he was 25, he had marched from Europe to Asia, crushing the mighty Persian Empire as if he were strolling through the marketplace. And that was just the beginning. Over the next 12 years, Alexander turned the world into his personal battlefield, leading his armies to Egypt, India, and beyond, only stopping when his exhausted soldiers collectively demanded a break. However, just as he stood at the peak of his power, he suddenly disappeared from the game at the age of 32, leaving behind an empire so massive that no one could hold it together. Alexander's life wasn't just a series of spectacular victories, it was filled with court intrigues, love affairs, and historical mysteries. So, what exactly made this young emperor so extraordinary? Let's dive into his journey from a war-hungry prince to an immortal legend, where every step was a battle, every feast was a drinking contest, and every decision shaped the course of history. The Ultimate Golden Child, Macedonian edition. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedonia. His father was King Philip II, a formidable warrior, and his mother was Olympias, a woman so strong-willed that many historians believe she was one of the earliest members of the strict mother-in-law club. From a young age, Alexander was the definition of a prodigy, handsome, an exceptional horseman, and intellectually brilliant, thanks to his tutor, the philosopher Aristotle. But above all, he had an undeniable passion for battle and conquest. In 336 BC, Philip II was assassinated, with suspicions that Olympias had a hand in it. At just 20 years old, Alexander ascended the throne and immediately cleaned up all opposing forces. Then, he boldly declared, "My father didn't get the chance to conquer Persia, so I'll finish the job." And so, his legendary campaign of conquest began. A legendary career: conquer first, plant the flag later. 334 BC, crushed the Persian army at the Battle of Granicus, kicking off a streak of unstoppable victories. 333 BC, faced Persian King Darius III at the Battle of Issus and taught him a valuable lesson: how to sprint at top speed. 332 BC, marched into Egypt, where the people welcomed him like a god. He thought to himself, well, looks like I just earned the title of pharaoh. 331 BC, obliterated the Persian forces at Gaugamela, officially reserving his seat on the throne of the most powerful empire of the time. 326 BC, crossed the Hydaspes River and defeated King Porus of India. But by then, his soldiers were exhausted and begged him, "Boss, we're tired. Can we go home?" So, reluctantly, Alexander agreed. But Alexander wasn't just a master of warfare, he was also a diplomatic strategist in the most literal sense. He married to secure power. In just a few short years, the young emperor managed to acquire 3 wives, and had he not died suddenly at 32, that list would have probably been much longer. So, let's take a look at Alexander's love life, where romance and politics went hand in hand. Wife number 1, Roxana, a Romeo and Juliet story, Macedonian edition. In 327 BC, during his campaign in Bactria, a region in Central Asia, now part of Afghanistan, Alexander unexpectedly ran into Roxana, a local princess who was beautiful, intelligent, and, unfortunately, quite unlucky. Why unlucky? Keep reading. The moment Alexander saw Roxana, he was smitten. While their marriage was politically strategic, helping him secure the loyalty of the Bactrians, historians believe this was one of the rare times Alexander genuinely had feelings for someone. Instead of claiming the usual spoils of war, gold, silver, or land, he decided to take a local princess as his prize. Rumor has it that during their wedding, Alexander personally cut the cake, though it's unclear if anyone made him serve drinks as well. Their relationship was strong, and Roxana became the woman he cherished most. She followed him on his relentless military campaigns, moving from one battlefield to another, a lifestyle that sounds romantic but was, in reality, utterly exhausting. The ultimate mass wedding. In 324 BC, Alexander organized a massive collective wedding in the city of Susa, an event often called the largest wedding in ancient history. More than 10,000 Macedonian soldiers married Persian women to promote peace between the two cultures. Among them, Alexander himself took not just one, but 2 Persian princesses, Statira II and Persidas II. And just like that, his royal harem gained 2 more members. Wife number 2, Statira II, the unlucky Persian princess who didn't last long. Statira II was the daughter of Darius III, the ill-fated Persian king who seemed destined to lose to Alexander. If there had been an award for fastest king of the year, Darius would have won it twice in a row, because every time he faced Alexander, he ran for his life. In 331 BC, after the Battle of Gaugamela, Darius met an even worse fate, betrayed and killed by his own men. Alexander, ever the chivalrous action hero, decided to avenge Darius by marrying his daughter. The wedding took place in 324 BC in the grand city of Susa, during the largest mass wedding in ancient history. Over 10,000 Greek soldiers married Persian women as part of Alexander's grand plan to unite cultures. While Alexander played the role of matchmaker-in-chief, Statira could probably only sigh and think, "Guess I don't get a say in this." There's no evidence that Alexander actually loved her. This was purely a political marriage. In fact, little is known about Statira's life with Alexander, but one thing seems clear: with her husband constantly off waging wars, she likely didn't receive much affection. Wife number 3, Persides II, married for peace, lost in the drama. Ever heard the saying, marry the wrong person, suffer for life? If not, just take a look at Persides II, the most mysterious wife of Alexander the Great. While Statira II was the official Persian princess, Persides II came from a different Persian royal lineage. She was the daughter of King Artaxerxes III, a former Persian ruler. Basically, if Persia were one big, complicated family, then Persides was the distant cousin that Alexander decided to marry, just to tie up all the loose political ends. No one really knows how Persides felt about this marriage, but chances are, she wasn't exactly thrilled. Why? Because Alexander was never home. He was too busy conquering the world, leaving his wives behind. If social media had existed back then, Persides would probably have posted a story like, "My husband is the greatest emperor in the world, but I barely see him all year." A life of glory and unexpected drama. Despite being married to the most powerful man of the time, all 3 of Alexander's wives must have known that life with a brilliant, ambitious, war-obsessed emperor would be both glorious and chaotic. What they didn't expect: that the real drama would begin much sooner than they thought, when Alexander unexpectedly logged out of life. 323 BC, the end of an era, but not without drama. By 323 BC, after years of relentless conquest, Alexander had finally wrapped up his long career grind of war. He had spent his entire youth on the battlefield, to the point that if someone had asked, "What are your hobbies?" his answer would probably have been, winning battles, slashing enemies, building an empire so huge it barely fits on the map, marching all the way to India just to realize war elephants are way too big and turning back. But this time, instead of marching into another battle, Alexander fell ill. During a lavish banquet in Babylon, he was suddenly struck by a high fever, stomach pain, and extreme fatigue. For 12 days, his condition worsened, and his generals could do nothing but stand around his bed, waiting for the inevitable. Some accounts even claim that near the end, Alexander was so weak he couldn't even speak, he could only communicate with his eyes. And then, on June 10 or 11, 323 BC, Alexander the Great, one of history's most legendary conquerors, logged out at just 32 years old. A death full of mystery, theories that still baffle historians. Of course, Alexander wasn't the kind of person who would just drop dead without leaving behind a historical debate. His cause of death remains a mystery to this day, with several major theories. 1. Poisoned by his own inner circle. Some believe that one of his generals, or even his first wife, Roxana, poisoned him to seize power. Problem? Most ancient poisons worked fast, but Alexander took 12 days to die, too long for any known poison at the time. 2. Malaria or typhoid fever. Alexander marched through swamps, jungles, and disease-ridden lands, constantly exposed to deadly bacteria and parasites. While he might have had the immune system of a war god, even he could have fallen victim to a tropical disease like malaria. 3. Overwork and excessive drinking. Alexander didn't just fight like a machine, he partied like one too. His non-stop feasts, heavy drinking, and sleepless nights may have pushed his body to the breaking point. Some historians argue that his self-destructive lifestyle was what finally broke him. 4. Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare neurological disorder. Modern scientists propose that Alexander suffered from an autoimmune disease that slowly paralyzed him, but left his mind completely conscious. This could explain why he could still look at people but couldn't speak or move, leading guards to mistakenly believe he was alive for longer than he actually was. A great conqueror, a great mess left behind. Regardless of what truly killed him, one thing is certain: Alexander logged out, leaving behind chaos for his wives and generals to deal with. The fate of Alexander's 3 wives. The moment Alexander the Great logged out, his vast empire descended into absolute chaos. Everyone wanted to be the next big boss, and Roxana quickly realized that if she didn't make the first move, she would soon become target practice for other power-hungry factions. So, what did she do? She eliminated her biggest rival, Statira II, one of Alexander's other wives. That's right, royal drama wasn't exclusive to Chinese palaces. The post-Alexander world had its own version of green tea scheming versus official wife warfare. Stepping into the spotlight is Roxana, Alexander's first wife, a woman who, if you need a reference, was basically a jealous and ruthless version of Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. Seeing Statira II as her biggest threat, especially since she had royal Persian blood, Roxana wasted no time in plotting her rival's downfall. According to some accounts, Roxana tricked Statira II and her sister, Drapetus, into coming to a secret location, where they were both assassinated. And that's not all. To erase all traces of the crime, Roxana had their bodies thrown into a well, because apparently, wells back then also doubled as evidence disposal units. Roxana eliminated Statira to remove any competition for power, but what she didn't realize was that she herself was next on the hit list of rival factions. After Alexander's death, Roxana gave birth to Alexander IV, the emperor's only legitimate heir. In theory, the boy was the rightful king, but in reality, he was nothing more than a pawn in the political games of Alexander's generals, who were constantly fighting for control of the empire. Eventually, Roxana and her son were placed under protective custody, which was really just house arrest, in Macedonia, under the watchful eye of Cassander, one of Alexander's most powerful former generals. By 310 BC, when Cassander decided that keeping Alexander's legacy around was no longer necessary, he coldly ordered the execution of Roxana and her son, erasing the last direct bloodline of Alexander the Great from history. As for wife number 3, Persides II, her fate remains a huge mystery to this day. There are several theories about what happened to her. Keycap 1, she met the same fate as Statira II, meaning Roxana had her eliminated to remove any potential rival for power. Keycap 2, she simply disappeared, perhaps realizing she had no real power in the deadly Game of Thrones. She chose to vanish, retreating into obscurity as one of history's most mysterious figures. Keycap 3, she got caught up in other political schemes. After Alexander's death, his generals divided his empire among themselves, so it's possible that Persides was forced into another marriage, becoming yet another diplomatic princess in the ongoing struggle for power. Conclusion: Alexander the Great, the legend who built the largest empire of his time, yet couldn't even keep peace within his own household. Conquering the world? Easy as pie. Keeping 3 wives alive and happy? Impossible. Roxana, his true love, yet ultimately got caught in political turmoil and met a tragic end alongside her son. Statira II, the unfortunate princess who barely had time to warm her seat before being eliminated by Queen Roxana. Persides II, perhaps the most mysterious side character in history, disappearing like a cameo in a blockbuster movie. And Alexander? Lived fast, died young, became a legend, but also left behind an absolute mess for the world to deal with. His empire fractured into chaos, his wives were either killed or lost to history, and future generations could only look back and sigh, a military genius, for sure, but when it came to managing his own household? Pure luck.